Hey guys, so I'm recording this video just to go over and review area and perimeter of squares and rectangles. So I do apologize, I'm doing this at my house, so you'll probably hear my dog in the background and my brother, so just ignore it. So these questions may look familiar. They are the questions from the warm-up that you had on Friday. I just want to go over them. Most of you got them right, but there were a few issues that I want to address. So first of all, let's just review. Perimeter is the area outside of a shape. Honestly, it might be better if you say around, so the area around a shape. Okay, so if we're looking at this first problem, this rectangle right here, if we're looking for the perimeter, we're looking for this area around the rectangle. So you can, if you want, you can count up each of these outside squares. And you could count them all up like that. Or, the easier way, we see this is 3, so this is 3, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is 6, and this is 6, and then we could just add them all up. And we could do 6 plus 3 plus 3. We could get, that's 12, so 6 plus 6 is 12, 3 plus 3 is 6, and then 12 plus 6 is going to give us 18. So this is 18 units. So you always have to put your unit of measurement, even if there, so if there isn't a unit of measurement, so this one didn't have a unit, then we just say units, okay? So the next problem, finding the perimeter. So this is a square, so that means all of my sides are 6 feet, right? So same thing, we can add, so 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6. Right, so 6 plus 6 is 12, 6 plus 6 is 12, and then 12 plus 12 is going to give me 24. And remember, it's 24 feet. Another way, so if you have a square, remember a square means all 4 sides are the same. That means we could just do 6 times 4, and you would still get 24 feet. But that only works with squares, okay? So it may just be easier for you to add them up. So when you think perimeter, just think adding up all of the sides. Okay, so perimeter means to add up all of the sides. So now let's go down to area. So area is the space inside of a shape, right? So if you wanted to, you could go through and you could count all of these little dots. But that would just take forever. So another way to think of it, is to think of, so right now we have 6 rows of 8, right? This is 6 rows of 8, which means we can multiply the 6 and the 8 to get our answer, right? And that's going to give us 48 units. And when we're talking area, we say units squared. We put a little 2 up there. And the reason why is because of these little squares, right? So we say units squared because we are looking at how many of these little squares are inside the shape. So even if there are no squares, like in this rectangle right here, there are no squares, we're still technically talking about the space inside. So when we find the area, we're going to put centimeters squared whenever we find the area. So anytime you're doing area, it's going to be squared. Perimeter, it's not squared, okay? You just put the units. If it's area, you put squared. And we'll go over that more in class, so don't worry if it doesn't stick yet. So another way we can think about this, so let's move on to this second rectangle, the 9 by 4. So you can think of the 4 rows of 9. So if we drew in our own squares, we would have the 4 rows of 9, right? But another way that we can think of this, and this is the way you probably thought of it in elementary school, was the area is equal to length times width. And that is true for rectangles and squares, but in middle school, we want to think of it as area is equal to base times height, right? So in this case, like this would be the base, and this is the height. And since this is a rectangle, since this is 9, that means this is 9. Since this is 4, that's going to be 4. So if we're thinking base times height, you know, your base is going to be 9, right? It's what it sits on, so it's 9. And then the height is how tall it is, so that's 4. And guys, remember, I'm using parentheses. Remember, parentheses mean multiplication. Okay, so parentheses means to multiply. So for this one, we have 9 times 4, which is 36. So I'm going to write that up here. So we have 36. And remember, it's centimeters squared because we're talking about area. Okay, so I want you guys to think of this area is equal to base times height instead of length times width. And the reason why is because when we do other shapes like triangles or trapezoids or things like that, base times height just makes more sense than length times width, okay? So in middle school, it's base times height, which it all means the same thing. We're multiplying the base times the height. Okay, so the last problem, we are finding the area of this square, right? The only problem is they only give us one side. Well, you have to remember it's a square. So if this is 4, which this is our base, remember. So I'm going to write my formula over here. Area is equal to base times height. So the base is 4, and then remember it's a square, so all the sides are the same. So that means this is also 4. So the height is also 4. So for this, if we just plug in, its area is equal to the base is 4, and the height is 4. And so 4 times 4 is just going to give me 16. And then remember, it's going to be inches, and it's squared because it's area. So that's just one of those things you're going to have to memorize. If you see the little 2, that means it's area. And then if you don't see a 2, so like up here when we did perimeter, so like when we just did the 18 units, that means it's perimeter, right? In the 24 feet, there's no 2 up there, so that just means it's perimeter. So I know that's kind of a lot, but it's okay. This was kind of a review. We're going to start learning how to find the area of more shapes this week. So I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same page with rectangles and squares. So there will be a few practice problems for you to try just to make sure you understand.